Good morning. It's Dr. Brian McKay, Core Health in Darien. Welcome to my podcast, Not Just a Chiropractor for Stamford, Darien, Norwalk, and Canaan. Yes, the worst title for a podcast, but we're not changing it now. All right. I don't know if you've ever heard of a thing called leaky gut. I know, leaky gut. It sounds kind of, well, it relates to your intestines. So if your intestines are leaky, the term applied to it is a leaky gut. Now, it's not a confirmed medical condition, but it sure as heck exists. And why it's not a confirmed medical condition, I have no idea. But basically, there's a lot of issues that go on when the walls that surround your intestines are not solid. Okay, it's a very thin mucosal layer that protects things by keeping the good stuff in and the bad things out. It also, when that barrier is penetrated, the toxins that are allowed to get out into your body are much have a devastating effect in terms of inflammation on the brain. What happens is there's a substance called a lipopolysaccharide, which is an endotoxin. Endotoxin just what it does is it inflames the tissue. And a serious thing here is there's a number of autoimmune diseases are up, increase like 4 to 7% uh, almost every few years, which is a big increase. And a lot of these autoimmune disorders, you just have them, they come up with a name, and they try to come up with a medication. But if your brain is in a constant state of inflammation, you're more susceptible to have a progressive disorder, an autoimmune disorder. And there's a lot of them. There's Graves, there's Sjogren's, there's a lot of different autoimmune disorders. I mean, in a sense, Alzheimer's. They have no cure for Alzheimer's, but is that a brain disease? Yeah, it's in your brain. It's Parkinson's. These are MS. These are things that attack your body, attacks itself from within, and we call those autoimmune disorders. Let's take it back down a few notches to your intestines. The intestines, 80% of your immune system resides in your intestines. 80%. There's more neurons, nerve cells in your intestines than there are in the spinal cord. And yes, I know that comes as a surprise as I'm a chiropractor, but it's not a surprise to me. But this immune system is vital, and it's protected by that mucosal layer that surrounds the intestines. Now, when your body has permeability of that layer, that dense cell layer, it's not thick, but it's very dense, and it keeps the good stuff in, the bad stuff out. You have leaching of these lipopolysaccharides into the bloodstream. And the lipopolysaccharide can go across the blood-brain barrier. Now, the blood-brain barrier is really meant to keep bad things out of the brain and let the brain work more efficiently. And when that barrier is penetrated, what tends to happen is you have what's called a cytokine storm. And I'm going to give you two names of cytokines. It's called interleukin 6 and tumor necrosis factor alpha, TNFA, IL-6, TNFA. And what happens in this case is these are pretty good protective mechanisms, but the presence of the lipopolysaccharides creates a chronic state where the macrophages, I mean, the interleukin 6 and tumor necrosis factor alpha are macrophages. What they do is they're going to go and attack, invading bad things into the brain. And what happens is they're good in the short term, but when they're chronically activated, we have what's called a cytokine storm. And there's a presence, and it does interfere. Basically, it clogs up the brain. I mean, you have to go after these things. You have to attack it. Then the brain's got to get the stuff out. And, a lot of times you'll hear about Alzheimer's is a condition called plaquing, and the brain gets plaques develop. And this is basically hardened sections of your brain. So the brain's not going to work as well if parts of it are hardened. So what has to happen is you got to understand the leaky gut. Leaky gut is where that barrier is penetrated, the thick protective layer is penetrated and allows for stuff to come out. How do you go about healing it? Well, number one, you would take a probiotic. A probiotic, you turn on the TV, you're going to hear about probiotics. Problem I've always had is finding one that works and says what it does, what it's going to do, what it says it's going to do. And the probiotics is a good step. People talk about Activia, all good, all good. And what happens is you're going to have a better balance within the intestinal walls, where you have patency of those. So it's not good. These endotoxins or lipopolysaccharides aren't going to leach out into the bloodstream if you have a solid wall built around it. Inside, as far as the level of the probiotic seeds, it's like if you want to plant new grass seed. Sometimes you have to put a little fertilizer, you pre-seed it, you post-seed it. There's a couple different steps. Well, what happens there is you need the balance between the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. There's going to be good and bad in the intestines. The idea is to keep it in there. When it leaches out into your bloodstream, that's where the problems arise. So the probiotic role is to reinforce good strains of bacteria that will help keep the bad bacteria in check. All right, that's usually step one. Now, I wish I could say all you got to do is take a probiotic. I mean, it helps. It definitely helps to eat on a healthy level all the time, but still not enough because there are so many different things that can cause inflammation. So the step number one is you got to basically recondition the gut. You want to change that environment. We call it the intestinal flora, so that it favors the beneficial gut bacteria. And how it's done is there's a relationship between acid and base. And when you have a good level of acidity in the intestines, it's going to limit the presence of the harmful bacteria. And it also produces metabolites that feed the good bacteria. So a probiotic is going to produce the metabolites that help feed the beneficial bacteria. So you're seeding, okay? But then you're also going to, with the right acidity in the intestines, you're going to limit the presence of the harmful bacteria. So that's a good step to take. Excuse me, I got the hiccups. So the next step, if you really want to do a gut restoration, is to add a prebiotic. Okay. Now, what happens is prebiotic is like that. You help to fertilize the lawn, and what the prebiotic should contain is oligosaccharides. Now, I said lipopolysaccharides are bad. Oligosaccharides feed the good bacteria and enhances the gut restoration. Okay? Really, really important because you want to maintain the integrity of the intestinal barriers. Okay? Now, that protective layer, the mucosal layer, when that breaks down, it allows toxins to pass through the intestinal lining into the bloodstream. I think I've covered this. So we're under understanding of a probiotic and now a prebiotic. But how do you help heal that mucosal layer? Well, certain amino acids help your body rebuild that protective mucus layer, and it also helps feed immune cells. So amino acids, are a vital nutrient, and basically is a three-step process. 1, probiotic. 2, prebiotic. 3, amino acids to help restore the mucosal level. Okay, so you really need to take a 3-prong approach to really achieve what we call total gut restoration. I know I probably hit you with a lot of big words. My hiccups don't help either. But anyhow, if you have further questions, I could be reached at 203-656-3636. 203-656-3636. I'm Dr. Brian McKay. Thanks for listening. Hope you learned something.